Hey guys, it's Bear. This is Life of T-Men, and this week's topic is friends. I've talked already on this channel and on my personal channel a little bit about, my friends and my experience with coming out to them, and, also, coworkers and peers at school and stuff like that. So I didn't want to repeat myself on this week's video. So I figured, I thought about it a lot, and I figured, well, we're talking about friends this week. Maybe I'll give some advice to people who have a friend who has come out to them as transgender, or who have a friend who is transitioning. In the trans community, you'll often hear us call those people allies. They're people that are on our side. So, some advice for allies, and this can also go for, friends, or if you have a student, or it's pretty wide range of advice that I kind of sat down and thought about. The first thing is, that this person, their personality is going to stay the same. People worry that when somebody transitions, their personality is going to change drastically. And in some cases, I'm sure that happens. But in general, when people transition, that underlying personality is the same. You're not going to need to learn to know a different person. You're going to need to learn to know somebody, the same person, who is going to present themselves to the world differently. They're going to live as what they see as the appropriate gender. And that may mean a major change and it may not. In my case, it didn't. I was already pretty much this person. I just asked people to see me a different way as far as pronouns and stuff like that. And I'll get to that. A big thing that people are concerned about when they know somebody transitioning, or even themselves, is in the case of somebody that's starting hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, that those hormones are going to affect the person's personality, and in a negative way. And, I'm sure, again, that has happened to people. In my case, the testosterone did the opposite of what people were worrying about, and the opposite of what many people worry about, is that you're going to start testosterone and you're basically going to Hulk out and become an angry, intolerant, impatient person. And in my case, that's the person I already was. And when I came out and started transitioning and started testosterone, I relaxed greatly. I don't blame that on the hormones. I actually blame that on the fact that I have started living more comfortably as my real gender, the gender I identify as, and I'm not trying to force myself into a role that I wasn't, and I think that was just making me really unhappy. Hormones can affect the way you emotionally react to things. You might be a little bit more impatient if you're on T. In my case, I don't need to hear the full story anymore. A lot of times I'll kind of be like, okay, I get where you we're going with something. It's cool, and I don't think I'm being rude when I do that, but that's changed. I'm a little bit less patient with that, a little less patient driving maybe, but or the person may feel more emotionally connected depending on what the hormones are doing to their bodies. They may react more emotionally to things, but in the cases that I've talked about with people, just in support groups and stuff, it's been the opposite. They've felt more relaxed and more happy. So don't let that worry you too much. It's a big thing we all go through, I think, though, and it's normal. But don't worry too much. Try to support the person by updating their name and pronouns. This is a huge one. It's very validating and very accepting just to call the person by the pronouns that they want to hear and the name that they want to hear. It's one of the first things that people, some people who were familiar asked me when I came out, and every time somebody asked me that, I just felt like, this relief that they understood where I was coming from and that I want to be seen as a man. Furthermore, it stings like hell when somebody messes it up. When you get misgendered, especially by a friend, it's just like getting slapped. It just hurts your feelings in a weird way, because again, you don't feel like they accept you the way you want to be seen and validate the way you feel. And that's a pretty heavy statement if you actually think about feeling invalidated. So, try to focus on it. It is hard at first, and if you're not quite thinking about it, if you're chatting away, you might slip and go back to what you're used to calling a person. Please realize what that does to the person, and try really hard not to do it. That's a huge one. Also, understand that they're going through a major change, and change isn't easy. Change is stressful no matter what kind of change you're going through. And if you were going through a major change, you would probably hope that people would be patient with you. If you got fired from a job or, left a relationship, starting a relationship, change is not easy. So please be patient with the person if they're stressed out about something that happened that seems minor to you, or are stressed out about, having to make new wardrobe choices. They may seek feedback or advice, try to be patient with that. If you know how that gender looks good or acts, if you are the gender that person wants to identify at or does identify as and wants to be accepted as, give them advice. If they're looking for wardrobe choices, give them advice and feedback, and try not to say something mean. Nobody wants to hear that something doesn't look good on them or so forth. Offer to go with if they're looking for new clothing and you know anything about that, or don't know anything about it and you know that they're gonna need to walk into a changing room at some point. That can be a really stressful thing for a trans person, something that most people don't ever think about. It's an anxiety attack every time I walk into a changing room for many, many reasons. So having somebody there with you can be really helpful, even if you don't know what the clothing is supposed to look like. Just being somebody's wingman is huge. But the biggest thing, and it's almost in the same category, but it's its own thing, is please do not gender police a trans person. Gender policing is where somebody says to you, oh, well, if you were a real man or woman, you would do this. Saying that I'm not a real man is probably the worst foul that you can make. Way worse than misgendering me. Well, it's the same, really. Way worse than calling me the wrong pronouns, way worse than calling me the wrong name is to tell me that a real man would finish his food right now. You're not a real man because you're reacting to something a certain way. And on and on and on. Please don't gender police somebody. It will make them really, really hurt. And it's a really, really horrible thing to do. Yeah, and there's lots of different examples of that. I could go on and do a whole other video about it, and I'm not going to. Those are my big thoughts, my big points on, being a trans ally, being friends with a trans person. Obviously it's complicated. Every person's relationship is different, and every person is different. Some people may not really care about this stuff. It may not bother them, or be bothered by something completely different. This is the stuff that are big for me. So hopefully, somebody out there can see this and, it's good advice for them. Or, a trans person might be struggling with a friend and have trouble putting it into words. Hopefully this, might be able to help with that. So thanks a lot for listening, and I will see you next week.